Oh, good.
Hopefully, while she's driving.
Good
Oh, I
morning.
need my paper and
This
pencil.
is the January 14th masterclass for communications. Today, we're going to be talking about the speaker's role in a conversation. So, after 3 masterclasses of listening, which we talked about active listening being critical. The speaker has
Judy,
an
will you mute?
Thank you.
the speaker has an important role as well. And the speaker's role falls into intention, clarity, and safety. Now, intention means, what is this conversation about? Now, a conversation might change a lot during the conversation. Normally, it's going to fall under informing someone, persuading someone, connecting with someone. And it could be that we start with a conversation where we're having a connection. I want to deepen my connection with you. But in that process, I want to tell you about a fair that's coming up. So I'm informing you, and then I'm persuading you to actually want to go. The other area of intention may be to resolve a problem. There may be something going on there that needs to be addressed. So while the intention may change throughout the conversation, you still need to know before you say the words, thinking, what is my intention of the next comment? Now, all communication problems that speakers have fall into one of 2 categories, either nonverbal communication or toxic communication behaviors. So as we look at some survey or some studies, you'll find that if a person has a choice between following the words that you're saying or the nonverbals that they're seeing, they will go with the nonverbals every time. So
Yeah.
that really means that you have to be congruent in your words as well as your body. Now, in terms of looking at nonverbal communication, it falls into several categories of your body. Now, the first one is your face. So, if you are telling someone how your ex husband took the children to a movie before they finished their homework, you may try to sound positive about it, but meanwhile, your face is going. So, you need to make sure that you're congruent in that. There's consistency. The second one is one that we hear about all the time, and that is eye contact. Do you have the eye contact that you want to have in the conversation? Now, interestingly, there's some research that says you should change the location of your eyes every 3 to 5 seconds. That seems really fast to me, but
Yeah.
you
Seems
want
weird.
yeah, that sounds like a lot. But at the same time, you don't want to be staring at them while they're talking and, totally creep them out. But generally, you're looking between one eye and the next eye and the bridge of their nose, and then the eye and back to the other eye. That's generally what you're doing. Now, it's perfectly fine to look away. If you're trying to come up with a thought, then you may look up and look around and decide what you're doing. However, you may also be looking away because you're distracted. You may be looking away because you are having uh, some stress in your life and your brain is going 100 miles a minute. So you're sort of listening, you're sort of speaking, but your heart's really not there. And the other one is you could be downright dishonest. When you are dishonest, you generally do not look the person in the eye unless you're a seriously good liar. Have you ever heard the phrase a downright liar?
No.
because when someone is lying, they look down and to the right. So that's where that old colloquialism comes from,
Had no
because
idea.
if you're being dishonest, you're not looking person in the eye usually.
Yeah.
So the next part of your body for toxicity is your posture and your body orientation. Now, if I'm sitting here like this, I'm kind of looking bored. Sorry, I'm here, but keep talking. It's okay. However, if your posture is good, then there's a feeling of being attentive and being involved. Body orientation, generally, you're going to be mirroring somebody face to face. However, if I'm talking to you and I'm like this, then I'm not really giving you my whole attention. My body is saying, I'm listening, but you're not that important. So, body orientation. Dee Dee, do you have a question? No?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I was just thinking of doing my videos from the side because I look younger, less, and instead of doing them full on where my beaver cheeks are showing and everything else. And I mean, what if your better side is like right here and you want to get your best?
Well, that's why will see a lot of photographers. They'll say, okay, now turn this way. But when you're doing video or anything online, you really want to be forward. You want to be open in what you're doing. So I'm sorry, disappointing as it may be, but you're beautiful straight on too. So that's posture and body orientation. The next are your hands and your arms. Now, I talk with my hands periodically. I'm not constantly doing this, but I do talk with my hands. And arms are important. If I'm sitting like this, then I'm being very closed. So, unless the room is super cold, you can assume if someone's standing like this, they're not happy with you. The next, yes, Dee Dee?
I notice when interviewing or doing things, a lot of men put their hands in their pockets.
That is not a good thing. That's showing not interested. Another thing you'll see men do is they'll put their hands in front of their crotch. That's another protective thing that they may do. But hands in pockets, they're not open to you, and they could be hiding something. So we've talked about the body orientation. The next thing is the voice. Now, vocal comes into three categories. It comes into the pitch of what you have, the volume of what you have. Now, if my pitch is up here, generally I'm a little stressed. I've got some stuff going on. I might be upset, as opposed to my normal voice, which is here. So if you're a little higher in your pitch, there's probably something going on that you're not really sure about, or you are sure about, and the other person needs to guess what it is. If you are a speaker who speaks very loudly, now some people just automatically they have a booming voice. But if in a conversation they're speaking to you more loudly than usual, then there's a reason. There's something that's saying, I don't think you're listening to me, or this is really important and I need your full attention. That's not a good thing. You need to be speaking through a normal voice in all of the things that you want to say. So you have the the face, the eyes, the body, the arms, and the vocal. So those are the nonverbals that people use when they are communicating. You are communicating every single time you are awake, whether you're saying a word or not. People look at you when they walk in a room and they can immediately tell you're fine or you're not fine. You're feeling aggressive. You're totally disoriented. So you really need to be focusing on how you act at all times. And that's hard because if you feel like you don't have to be on, no one's talking to you at this party, so you're just sort of standing in a corner, and in the process of standing in a corner, you slouch your shoulders because you're tired. Somebody's going to see that, and they're going to come over and say, "Hey, what's wrong?" That's not the direction that you want to be going in. So you need to be aware that you're communicating every minute of every day that you are awake. Now, one of the other areas that we need to talk about is toxic communication behavior. There are people who have learned bad behavior techniques. It is not that they're not bad people. And I'm not excusing their behavior. I'm just saying that there's some things going on that aren't unnecessarily under their control. So until they learn that they have some type of communication behavioral issue, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. And they think that they are really good. They think they're passionate about what they're talking about, and they're honest and they're engaging. And so as they're doing these things, they're generally making the listener feel very uncomfortable. Now, I want to be able to give you a couple of these examples. So I'm going to actually read from this to make sure that I cover. Actually, before I do that, hey, Nisha, welcome. Glad you're here. So if what we're talking about right now, and actually before I get into toxic behavior, let's go back to nonverbal communications for a moment. Do you know of anyone, and I don't want names, do you know of anyone who has a particular nonverbal communication that is particularly distracting or annoying? Yes, Vicky.
Thank you. While you were talking, that's the thing that stopped me while you were talking. And what I was thinking to myself was, in the United States, there are several accent types that are there. And there's a particular type of accent that is very brash, and it's very New York, and it's very strong, and sometimes it almost feels threatening. Sometimes I can't listen to it. It's a very brash type of New Yorker speak. It's not forget about it. It's not like that. It's just very brash.
Yes, and that's a good point. That falls into the vocal of normally they're a little louder.
Mhm.
Their pitch is what the pitch is, and they don't really care.
Yeah.
So they're going through that, but that's a great example.
And I noticed the difference between Gen Jones and boomers and Gen X. We end on a low note when we talk so that it's there, but I remember when my daughter was growing up, I could hear her turn the sound up, so it sounded like, "Today, we went to the mall, and then we were shopping, and I got a notebook," and everything ended on the up. And when she was talking, I used to do this because I could see that goes up. And now as adults, when I listen to some podcasters and they're talking, it's hard for me to take them seriously. because they end on the up, and it always reminds me that that's that generation that does that, where our generation, we have a tendency to end the sentence on the down.
Mhm.
Everything softens lower, everything goes deeper. And this thing, I trust that more. Like if I'm on stage and I can tell exactly what that is, and I feel like quietly, whether you know it or not, if you end on the up or you end on the down, there's a different power between the two of them. And maybe both are okay, but I I hear that.
That's very interesting that have noticed that because a lot of people would not have, but it's significant. In the vocal range, if normally, as you said, the majority of people go down, and that feels comfortable for other people. That feels confident with other people. When you go up, it's everything sounds like a question. And, I went to the mall. Well, did you really go to the mall? Um, you need to be aware of what you're doing and how you're speaking. As a speaker, I had someone tell me that all my sentences ended on the down. And they said, you really need to get more ups in there. But I wasn't terribly comfortable with that because everything sounded like a question and don't want to do that.
It builds a type of uncertainty when you do it. It's
Mhm.
like if you're talking and if you're making a statement where you're, like, being sarcastic or something where you're like, "Did they really do that?" Then that's funny, it could be insightful, whatever you want it to be. But on the whole, if I listen to that, I hear uncertainty, like, "Was it okay that I went to the mall? Is it okay that I have this opinion?" It doesn't have any kind of certainty to me.
Mhm. That's an excellent point. Good observation. Dee Dee, do you have something?
Well, I know that there is somebody who I don't mind the way she talks, but everybody gets irritated by her, and she tends to be the type that Vicky was talking about. Maybe I'm assuming at this point, but I kind of know the accent and the stresses are different. You
Yes.
know, the stresses are in a place that are unusual. And it's an Eastern type of accent, Jersey, New Jersey kind of Eastern accent.
Mhm. Yep, that Jersey, New York,
Mhm.
is very distinctive.
Mhm.
Now, Nisha, feel free to jump in, but my guess is that you're driving, and I don't want you to be unsafe, so feel free to pop in if you want to. Otherwise, I'm just going to, go ahead and talk and keep you safe. So, the toxic communicators that we have out there, they are there are 6 that people talk about, and they are the bully, the dominator, the superior, the zinger, the over-explainer, and I ran out of fingers. There's also a performer. But, yes, Dee Dee.
Sorry, bully, dominator, superior, zinger, and the last two I didn't get. Entertainment, I did
Um,
get.
over-explainer,
Over explained it. Thank you.
and then there's also a performer. So what we have on that, and this is what I wanna read because there are some examples here of the kind of things they say, and I wanna be able to incorporate that. So excuse my reading. Now, the bully is an aggressive communicator. They're aggressive in their volume, they're aggressive in their physical distance between you. They may encroach on your personal space. they just have an aggressive form of communication. And they may say things like, "Well, I'm just being honest. You're too sensitive." Well, someone has to say it. Um, I'm amusing you. So the bully, they're, well, I'm just being honest about it. They are not, there are some things that you just don't say, and the bully will say them. Or, you're being too sensitive. I'm being honest and you're being sensitive. And then, well, someone has to say it. That attitude that's there. And they really want to dominate you. However, there's one called the dominator, and the dominator, they don't want to dominate you. They want to dominate the talk time. So they will interrupt. They will constantly try to have the conversation um, around whatever's efficient. If I interrupt you, then I'm being efficient in this as opposed to letting you continue. And they may say things like, "Let me stop you there. No, listen." Or, "Well, here's what's actually happening." So, yes, Vicky.
I wanna ask this question because I have a feeling that, um, on the internet, there are books written that and programs sold for people to learn to speak in just the way that you were talking about in the bully and in the dominator conversation, and I have in my head that one is very narcissistic. They're very male dominated speaking habits because men compete and they try to best each other in the conversation like yes but and yes but yes but yes but and it's like somehow they win a prize if they can shut the other guy up, which isn't quite how women communicate. And I was wondering in those aspects, if you had an opinion or a knowledge base, which one is more likely to be a narcissistic type of communication, and which one is more a competitive form of speaking? Is it the dominator that's more a competitive speaker and the bully more of a narcissist speaker, or is it the other way, or is it combination of 2?
I don't have any research that tells me that. However, in my opinion, the narcissist is the dominator. They want to keep talking constantly because it's
It's
all about,
covert.
yeah, it's, I'm in control of the situation. Over you. Whereas the bully,
Mm,
they're just focusing on wanting to be better. I can
mm.
control you. And control for the bully is very important. But your observation that those two are more male communication behaviors
Styles.
is very true. It's very true.
Mm.
Yes, Dee Dee.
Wouldn't that go to the primary objective of male communication as well? I mean, a male communication wants answers, they want directions, they want information, they don't want to meet minds or. So, wouldn't that be more pre-opted to them? And when do you divide the line?
Yes, I agree with you based on the conversations that we've had in the past, the difference between male and female communicators. I think that it would be unlikely to have a female dominator or female bully. I won't say they don't happen,
Yeah.
but I've worked for a few of them. But um, no one on this call, however.
Thank you.
But but I agree with you because the goals are different between male and female. females really want to connect with you. They want to make nice. They want to smooth things over. Whereas the men are far more competitive. They want to be more efficient. They want to inform. They want to keep going. Yes, Vicky.
So now that we have those two things on the table and we're listening to this incredible way of looking at toxicity in conversation, I want to go to like, let's say there are people who are um, working to get a job, or maybe English is their second language, and maybe, their accent is thick or whatever it is. Let me ask you, how does that affect their ability? Like, let's say in the languaging, two people are going for the same position, and for all intents and purposes of my question, they both are absolutely qualified. And the decision making process is going to be based on how they speak. Because you know how, I don't mean to say this to Germans, I love you, but all their accents and how they speak sound angry. If you don't know the language, you think these people are pissed. And if that, like, that carries over, let's say you're learning to speak English, and it's English is not as aggressive sounding as a of German. And I'm wondering how, then what's going to be the deciding factor? And also, I have a question about raises and communication, because I'm looking at somebody who's going to be judging you, evaluating you, investigating you, and what they want. But the thing is, they're not going to tell you what they want. They're just going to ask you questions and see how you respond. And they're looking at all these differentiators that you just talked about earlier. Like, here's how it looks, here's how it sounds, here's how it feels. And you said that communication was like this full body experience. So the differentiator could simply be who they choose by tone. Is that like your accent, your tone, your smoothness, and how you speak, and all of those things? Is that true? And what differentiator, if that's true, how does that, do you have any data on how that helps you get a raise, or how that helps you move ahead, or how they choose you? Because
Absolutely.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I want to hear you.
Absolutely. Uh, Research shows that good communicators make 10 to 15% more than poor communicators. They're more likely to be promoted. And in an interview process, absolutely, the nonverbals are as important, if not more important, because that's a feel thing, as
Mm,
opposed to you answered all the questions right, but you were sort of sitting back here looking sort of
yeah.
bored. You were looking every place else. You had a frown on your face. Somebody will look at that and they will feel uncomfortable with you. Now, in terms of the bully and the dominator, I believe that if, as an example, English is your second language, I think it has to do with your confidence in your English, because I had an experience not long ago. Um, I do not know what this woman's native language was, but she was a cashier at a bank, and I could not understand a word she said. However, she definitely became a bully because I kept saying, "I'm very sorry. I don't understand you. Could you repeat that slower?" And finally, I ended up asking for another cashier. But she really became a bully about it, like I was the bad guy
Yeah.
as an American in an American bank wanting to have someone who spoke English or clear
That you could
English.
understand.
Exactly. So I do believe that you can have bullies and dominators with English as a second language people, but I think that's more inclined with how confident they are. If they're learning, they're not as strong, they don't feel as confident, then it's unlikely that they are going to be a bully or a dominator. Now, there are some of these other toxic communications behaviors that they may do, but if I feel uncomfortable or awkward about what I'm saying because I'm concerned I'm
Mhm.
not using the right word, or that you're going to think poorly of me, or you think I'm stupid, or something like that. You're more focused on those things than you are bullying or dominating a conversation.
Thank
And
you.
that's based on research. I've done a lot of research on English as a second language. Miss Dee, did you have a question?
No, it just reminded me of the story. I will share it later.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so for toxic communication, thus far we have talked about the bully and the dominator. The third one is the superior. Now, this is the person who wants to make sure that you know that they are smarter than you, they are richer than you, they are everything more than you. So they'll say things like, "You'll understand when you have more experience," or "No, that's not accurate," or "Well, the research actually shows." So they're going through those things, and it belittles the listener and makes for an awkward conversation because you have a listener who is feeling belittled with everything they say. So the body language starts changing. They start getting smaller, feeling smaller, and not listening as deeply, and not really wanting to respond in a communication because, I mean, if you have a superior and you have a bully, that's an ugly conversation. So, fortunately, not everybody falls into these 6 categories. But when you have 2 toxic communicators in a single conversation, that's usually an ugly conversation. Those are not people who are connected on a deep level simply because they don't feel comfortable with each other. Now, the fourth one is the over explainer. Now, we talked about the over explainer in our last our last meeting. And one of the great points that Dee Dee brought up was sometimes the over explainer just wants to draw you into their life. Other times, the over explainer wants to clarify this picture for you, and they want to make you part of the experience. They want you to see it in your mind, and you don't really care. So, what you want to do with an over explainer, you'll hear things like, "Well, then the green car came running." Wait, no, it wasn't a green car. It was a yellow car. Yeah, yeah, it was a yellow car for sure. It has nothing to do with the story. They're clarifying for you. You'll also hear a lot of, "And then I said," so it'll go back and forth because you need to hear everything that I said and she said, and it becomes a little tedious. So that's the over explainer. The fifth one is the performer. Now, the performer is different from the dominator. The dominator, it isn't drawing attention to them as much as the dominator just wants to take control of the situation. The performer wants to keep bringing the conversation back to them. And they'll say things like, "Well, that reminds me when same thing happened to me." "Oh, I totally get that. Listen to what happened." So it all is I. Tell me more, get it back to me. And then you have the zinger. Now, the zinger uses sarcasm and condescending humor, and that is a way of bullying. Now, what you'll have there is, "Well, I would never do that," or, "Boy, you must have been really embarrassed when that happened," or, "Yeah, but you're fat enough to do that." You know, "Oh, I didn't mean to offend you, I was kidding." Yeah, well, you did offend me. You did hurt my feelings. You did make me feel small. So, as they are going through that. Yes, Vicky.
Thank you. You know, I was listening to you talk about all of the communication styles. And one of the things that came through my mind as you were speaking them was I think generations of people have been taught to speak in these toxic negative habits by watching TV, not watching cable or, I mean, just basic TV, because the zinger is used in these writers when they write, these one-liners, they use these zingers and then people take it on like, "Ooh, I'm gonna use that to zing," or, "Ooh, I'm gonna use that to dominate." It's like nobody's ever learned to speak outside of, proper, um, proper English. Like, here's a noun, here's an adverb, this is how the sentence structure is. And I was wondering, what is it that you think was the dominant? It's like even when you learn speech and debate, you learn that habit that you're just more superior or we've learned, a generation has learned toxic speaking habits that we hand to our children. And then when our children use them in communication, we're feeling offended. Don't you talk to me like that. And I was wondering, as these um, how do you create discernment in the conversation? Because somebody can sound offensive when they're really not trying to be offensive. It's that they learn more to communicate. Like, I could think All in the Family, meathead. I mean, they're bullying words. Even in shows like Friends, the Chandler and his zingers, that's like part of the show that we laugh at, but then we learn these communication styles and repeat them. Do you know what I'm asking, by the way?
Yes, and I think that's a very interesting point. Normally, the things we learn start with our family of origin. And then as we begin getting out into the real world, our teachers, especially if you take a speech and debate class, you're taught a specific way to communicate because you may not be superior, but your idea, your the point that you need to debate is superior. But you can incorporate that into your own language. And then multimedia really makes a difference. My daughter watches YouTube videos, and a lot of them I listen to, and I tell her she can't listen to them anymore because they're being offensive to other people. Not bad language, just zinger after zinger because it's funny. Now, if that's in the context of a sitcom, then it may be within reason, it may be funny because you have the whole context. But in real life, that kind of sarcasm and humor is rarely funny.
Agreed.
Somebody is offended. So context of learning may vary. Context of a speaker using zingers is not funny.
You know,
Someone
I wonder sometimes because for people with English as a second language, one of the ways that they learn is by watching the videos, like you were saying. And without meaning to, they could be learning these toxic speaking habits that sabotage whatever it is that they're trying to do. And it's like, um, as I'm listening to you, I feel like some of the biggest toxicity we have in communication in the world is these 5 things that we learned, that we use, that we think gives our ego some sort of expression it doesn't normally have. It gives us a false self-esteem. It's not self-love. It's not even it's destructive. It's so destructive, and it's so infused in our society right now. And I realize when you're looking at English as a second language, it's does your communication actually express who you are?
That's an interesting point. I've never thought about that, and I've never seen any research on that. But you're right. The place that a lot of people learn another language is movies, music, television. And those places don't always have the healthiest communication skills that you would learn. And it is possible that someone could learn that because they're funny. Um, Dee Dee, what do you have?
It's very interesting because when we're talking about, toxic communication, what one culture perceives as toxic communication, another culture won't. It was in a communication, if I can tell a story quickly, in a communication course I was taking, my culture stresses and gets excited and talks louder when they're pleading. Okay. But what she came from another culture that was Irish, and they raise their voice and get angry and are bullying somebody when they raise their voice. So, what I was trying to plead with her, and I'm doing what I thought was normally pleading with her, and she was interpreting it as, you're going to beat me up if I don't do what you say. And communication is always within context. If I'm managing in New Jersey, I might have to go with a little bit of the Jersey style of communication. And in Germany, because they use more fricatives than we do, the punishment language is soft. So where we would think they're praising us, and they think we're stupid because when they're insulting us, they talk very softly, using soft words and soft, you know. And we think they're praising us because of our communication style. And actually, what they're doing is saying, "Oh, you're really stupid. Look how I can manipulate you." So it's very difficult, trying to figure out when to draw the line with toxicity. What would you recommend?
Well, first and foremost, cultural context is huge. And if you are traveling, it is imperative that you understand. A friend of mine went to Africa. She did a safari, and there was a man that she kept smiling at because she's a smiler and she smiled at everybody. But this man took it as an invitation because in that culture, if you look them in the eye and smile, that's flirting. Now, she had no idea, but the same is true when you're talking. I love the example of Ireland, where if I'm trying to make a point and I'm getting a little louder, they perceive it as angry. And I didn't know about the German, where when they're insulting you, they get really quiet. I'll have to pay attention to that next time I talk to someone who's German. Yes, Vicky.
Yeah, I just wanna express that that's how the English, the Americans, were loud and gregarious and everything else. And, when I was living in London, my loudness, my bigness, everything stuck out there, even if it's there. But yeah, I see what she's saying as well. But in these toxic things, I just want to say, I believe that people have learned to speak in these toxicities by watching a lot of TV and a lot of movies. And I believe that people English with a second language, when they come in, they're learning all these bad habits, and it's not going to help their career. It's not going to help them get a better raise. It's not, and they may be thinking to themselves, why am I stuck here? Why am I stuck? What is stopping me from getting to that next level up? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel as though uh, talking to you today about this, I feel as though there's so many secrets to being a good communicator that I'd never thought about before.
There really is. And again, it's a lot of it is contextual. It is certainly culture based. Uh, and when someone is coming in with English as a second language, they don't just need to know how to get rid of their accent or make their accent more clear. They need to understand contextual things like toxic behaviors. And I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. They're watching movies, listening to music, and and they can easily learn toxic behavior. Dee Dee, you have something else?
Yeah, I would like to point out, since radio, um, uh, media has governed communication and conceptual understanding of culture, races, so on, more than any other influence. I mean, look at the King's Speech alone. And, you know, I find it extremely fascinating how strong the influence is and how purposely negative it has been made. It has been developed because negativity and drama sells.
That's that's an interesting concept. I would hate to think that negativity sells, but drama certainly does. You know, if you've got some sensational story, that's the one that's going to draw attention of, so and so is getting divorced. Well, yeah, sure. On the Inquirer, that's what they say. But so, in addition to all of the nonverbals that we've talked about, and all of the toxic behaviors that we talked about, I do want to bring up good communication, good things that a speaker does. And first and foremost, they need to be speaking, and I already mentioned intention. So, intention is part of what they do, clarity is part of what they do, and safety is part of what they do. Now, we've already talked about um, intention with knowing that you're going to inform, persuade, connect, or resolve a situation. So we've talked about those things. Clarity is very important. And it's very important in, for example, English as a second language, because the language may be difficult to understand. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be proud of your heritage. That doesn't mean that you have to sound like you're from New York. But it does mean that, like the second cashier at the bank that I experienced, your English needs to be crisp. In addition, clarity means short sentences. Those sentences that go on that say, and then I said, and then she said, and then so and so said. I'm bored and I'm lost somewhere in the middle. But what I don't want is those long sentences. Shorter sentences make for clearer communication. And the other thing that makes for clearer communication is not changing the subject, not having a lot of tangents. That's another thing that can be very disturbing to some people and certainly does not make the conversation any more clear. So, if you have a lot of side stories that you want to share, deal with them one at a time. Deal with one story, and if I tell a story and Dee Dee is listening and then Dee Dee responds to me, now I can tell my next story. Let's not try to get it all in before it's your turn to speak. Does that make sense? And finally, emotional safety. Now, this goes back to what we were saying with toxic behavior. If you have any of those 6 pieces of toxic behavior, they are going to make an impact on the listener, most probably, or potentially other people around. Now, the listener may have such a poor self concept, they're used to that, or they know that this other person is just joking and they can handle that. But if I'm listening to you, to your conversation that I may not be involved in, I may get angry for you. So, maintaining emotional safety for everyone in the conversation is very important to make sure that you're not feeling belittled, you're not feeling dominated, you're not made to feel stupid, that you aren't meant to feel that, Sam, you're talking too much. I don't care if the car was yellow or green. Um, those behaviors can create offense to people. And so emotional safety is also a rule or a role of the speaker in a conversation. Now, conversations are very challenging because you talk, then I talk, then you talk, then I talk. And there's not a lot of pause in between, usually a small pause. But that's a lot to think about as a speaker. As a listener, listening is hugely important, but you don't have as many pieces of the puzzle to discern as you do when you're the speaker, because you need to keep the energy in the same place. You need to make sure you're being clear. You need to make sure you're not offending someone. You need to make sure that there's actually a purpose for the conversation as opposed to you just blathering on about whatever. So the speaker has the most difficult role in a conversation. And if something goes sideways in a conversation, it probably was a speaker's fault, more so than a listener's fault. Does all of this make sense? Yes, Vicky.
So, what came to mind for me was a technique that Oprah Winfrey uses when she's in conversation with anyone. Before she, um, when she sits down with them, the first question she asks them is, "What is the intention of this meeting? What's the intention of this communication, etc.?" So that everybody can name why they're in with her, why they're here, etc. And when you were talking about the speaker, um, I think it has more of a leadership role. I don't think it may be difficult, but it is a definite level of awareness that I think when you were talking about intention and asking about stating the intention of what you're speaking about or what you're talking about, what you're communicating about. My question is, um, are these techniques that we're learning in communication different when there's a public place where, like, are we learning to speak in a group of people that are in a living room or the group of people online? Is it different? And it's like how you present yourself. We've talked about this on a previous call online is vastly different than how you're presenting yourself in a room where people can see you, like a networking event. And then my second question is, in the networking event where your communication is even saying whether somebody's going to hire you or not hire you or not want to do business or not want to connect with you, if you use these toxic communication skills without realizing it, then what um, I'm not sure that the communication skills you just talked about, the good ones that are there that we just are in, are they applicable online or only in person at networking events? Or is there a dividing line between how you operate online with these and how you operate in person with these? Is there a difference?
Yes, online in particular, absolutely different. The fact that you and Dee Dee raise your hand so that as the facilitator, I can invite you to speak, as opposed to somebody constantly interrupting. And the opportunity that you have is if somebody is being a bully, is shooting zingers at people, you can mute them. And that's a great thing about it. However, all the good stuff, the clarity, the short sentences, the no tangents, the not interrupting by raising your hand, not over explaining, all of those things really come to light in online, as well as when you're speaking at a network, you're networking with people, you're in a living room or you're one-on-one. Because now you have an intention. At a networking event, you have an intention of meeting somebody, connecting with them on some level so that you can then have a follow-up. The intention in a living room may be more creating connections with people. So the good things, the intentions are the same. The clarity is the same. You need to keep it short and sweet. The only place that it's different is online, and all the rules still apply, but you have a different method of addressing the situation. If three of us are standing there having a conversation and one person starts becoming a bully, then one of those two people should shut them down. Now, if I'm not capable of doing that because I've just been judged about something, then hopefully the third person will diffuse the situation. And you can diffuse it in a lot of ways. Sometimes you have to be direct with some people and say, well, wait a second, come on, you're being a little rough here. In other ways, you can diffuse it as well, in something that's a little more subtle, where you divert the conversation to something else. Yes, ma'am.
I want to share with you, I think the things that you're sharing with us and teaching us, I was thinking, there's a lot people can learn as an employee, but I think that what you just said and being entrepreneurial, I'm like, if I look at my communication skills, that is like I would mark it as 90% of my success. And being able to listen or communicate these skills, if you don't have this skill with you and you step out into the entrepreneurial world and wonder, why am I not succeeding? Why am I failing? Why am I not having the growth that I want? Why am I not having this? Everything about how you communicate your message in person, how you present yourself to the world. And I just got today the difference between some people who struggle and use these toxic habits don't know. They actually don't know that they're using the toxic habits. And these people who learn these good habits, um, which is these speaking capabilities that come naturally, that match your system. And something I wanted to share with you that just hit me. I was like, when did um, my entrepreneurial skills really take flight? And I read a book called Nonviolent Communication. And that one book changed my life. It changed my trajectory. It changed how I express myself. And what it did was show me toxic habits into non toxic habits. That's the one thing. And without me knowing it, without me realizing it, I thought, oh, I'm just learning a skill set. And so I think that anybody who has English as a second language, or anybody who's entrepreneurial, or anybody who wants to actually get a raise, has to know what really gives them the edge, what really gives them that next step. And you just named it. And like it was, all the pieces fell in place in my head all at once, just right now. All the pieces of, oh, this is how oh, that's how the accelerant happened. And the differentiation between having these good conversations and good tactics that you're teaching are way more than just acting like a good communicator. I can tell you the difference. It's the difference between 100,000 a year and 500,000 a year. That's the power of it for me. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're not improving this one area, you are leaving millions of dollars on the table. And I just wanted to say thank you, because when you just said that last statement, I just had an aha moment. I was like, that's actually what's your secret to success?
Mhm.
Talking better.
Absolutely. Communication is the foundation of
Mhm.
everything.
Absolutely.
And the reminder that you are communicating even when you're not speaking with your nonverbal communications. Huge, huge piece of the puzzle and success in life, in relationships, in business, in everything. Dee Dee, do you have a closing thought?
I do have a closing thought. For me, the foundation of communication is connection, is wanting to connect, and not overlaying my communication um, knowledge onto someone else, but to try and hear what they're communicating to me, to listen well. And so communication first starts with the foundation of wanting to be understanding. And it seems like so many times we learn a little bit something like psychology and we start labeling everybody as a narcissist, a psychopath, you know, rather than try and hear where they are and what's happening with them. And I think there's so many cultures in America and so many things we get used to. It's very difficult to, you know, I can hold to the intention, clarity, and safety, you know,
Mhm.
as the speaker, and I can hold to trying not to be toxic when communicating. But I also kind of have to accept people because people need different things. Some top business people need someone who's like, a domineering person to push them forward, to correct them all the time. No, that's John, you know? So I don't know what people need. I
Well,
just know the best way to communicate.
I think it's interesting that you said connection, which is really more of a woman thing, um, which is a good thing, but also that you want to be understanding. Not only understanding, but understood. That's the other piece of the puzzle. and you are understood when you're speaking with the intention, clear intention, when you are focusing on the relationship, you're focusing on the clarity, and you're focused on the safety of the other person, that you have a consciousness of the safety of the other person. I have, yes, Vicky.
Maybe I'll unmute. I just listened to Edie, which I think is really important what she just said about connecting. And um, while my intention is to connect, that's not always someone else's connection. And the thing is, there are people who are manipulative. They are narcissistic. They are, wanting to take advantage of you. They're all of these things. And one of the things is the filter by which you just put in, which is, I want to be understanding. That's smart. And the other filter I want to add in is, I want to be discerning, because I've had people try to use me or want me for money or all the other things that can be in there. And the communication is what I thought was full body. You're going to know, or if you're aware and you're in that speaker position, you're aware of when someone is being covert, so to speak, or their intention isn't. And I think having that understanding means understanding yourself first, which I thought was really good. And then understanding that you want to connect first, because only through connection can you get that vibe or presence. But I have, I don't know if you can answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you're a speaker, like when you specifically, Karen, are in a group of people, what is your process or filter to see if this person is, yeah, authentic or maybe even slightly trustworthy? Or because you know how some people, she who must not be named, present really well, but then
Mhm,
there's just manipulation on the back end.
mhm.
And you know what I mean? I'm like, what's the filters? Because I think she brings in a good point. You have to want to connect, you have to want to understand, but then you have to trust your little red flag that goes up.
Yep. Instinct and gut feeling is hugely important as a listener. You need to, for me, and I can't answer the question. I can't tell you what comes first, whether it's nonverbal or
Mhm,
verbal or
mhm.
just sometimes my spider sense just goes off and they haven't said a
Yep.
word. So
Yeah.
trusting your gut is critical because as
Because
a listener, you need to make sure that you're not divulging things you shouldn't be divulging. And then when you speak to them, you want to make sure that they're not listening to get information from you that will hurt you down the road.
well, it's so interesting because, I realized today, over the years, I've gotten a little cynical. And when I meet people who don't know me, but know me like they saw me online or, whatever, and they come over, the first thing I think is, what do you want? What do you want? Why are you here? What do you want? And I think that's my inner way of saying, what's the intention of this conversation? Because I'm not Oprah Winfrey. And if I said that out there, they'd freeze or, flight or whatever it is. And I think, what do you want? What are you trying to get? And I thought, well, that's very cynical. That's not actually trying to connect. That's trying to protect, you know?
And that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point because our life experiences are going to be the filter through which we speak and we listen. Yes, Dee Dee.
I just wanted to say, we're all attracting because of our work. We're creating a magnetic force to draw things to us that are like us. So, in some way, we have to kind of trust our experience and our patterns of experience in, even though it's, we can allow room for that to be inquisitive. But yeah, people are going to come to you and ask you things that they're definitely not going to ask me of, you know? And same with you, Karen. And that we attract certain people to us. I don't see many Buddhists coming up and talking to Buddhism about Karen, but I get it all the time. You know,
Yeah. Well, and again, that goes back to contextual situations. I'm going to wrap us up. You have been very generous with your time and given me 13 extra minutes. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I love your class.
Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Nisha, thank you for being here. Thank you for driving safely. And hope to see you at our next masterclass next Wednesday as well.